He also spoke with Tim Walz at a rally in Wisconsin, former President Obama did, and said one of the most I think every Republican or right of center person on earth did one of these. Like,
I get why sometimes people just don't want to pay attention to it. And we all have friends like that. We have family members who just like, it's all a circus out there. I get that.
It's like, why don't we take Obamacare? Something you shoved down the throats of the American people without majority support, the first major overhaul to an entitlement ever, in decades at least, without majority support. And you just said elections have consequences, John. And you lied to us for a year about being able to keep our doctors. That had us really divided. You got in there, started commenting on legal cases like Trayvon Martin, which we had never seen a U.S. president do before. You injected race into it, saying if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. I remember being shocked as a lawyer to see a U.S. president comment like that on race on a case like that where you didn't know the full facts and wound up getting them wrong, actually.
He was marketed as the man who would change everything. The cool, unshakable leader who could heal a divided nation. But behind the iconic speeches and magazine covers was a presidency filled with contradictions, controversies, and quiet compromises the public was never meant to see. This isn't the story you were told about Barack Obama. This is the one you weren't supposed to hear. When Megyn Kelly decided to go after Barack Obama, she didn't come with soft jabs. She came with a wrecking ball. Her take wasn't about disagreeing on policy. It was about dismantling the entire presentation. She called out the way his presidency was packaged like a Hollywood blockbuster, dazzling trailer, flawless cinematography, and a leading man who knew exactly how to deliver the big monologue, even if the plot behind the scenes was falling apart. Kelly has a knack for stripping away political theater, and with Obama, she treated his legacy like a magician's trick. The kind that looks impressive until you realize the card was up his sleeve the whole time. She painted him as a man more obsessed with the optics of leadership than the messy work of governing, someone who could nail a late-night talk show punchline but couldn't seem to close the gap between promise and delivery. And she didn't shy away from the uncomfortable truth. The media helped build this image. Obama wasn't just leading a country, he was starring in a long-running reality show called The Presidency. And according to Kelly, the media acted less like journalists and more like hype men.
They stole his first term as president. These absolute liars who run around trying to act like they're the protectors of democracy completely ruined it, tried to undermine it at every turn and at the highest levels with lies, with out-and-out lies that were really serious, and changed foreign policy and changed the course of history in this country in Trump's presidency. And there must be accountability. There has to be actual criminal accountability for those who lied. And I can't wait to see this administration do it.
Megyn's real sweet spot, though, was calling out the contradictions. She tore into the idea that a man who won the Nobel Peace Prize could simultaneously preside over a drone program that turned entire regions into target practice. She highlighted how Obama talked about unity while sharpening partisan divides, how he promised transparency yet ran one of the most secretive administrations in decades. Her delivery was razor sharp, part legal cross-examination, part stand-up roast. She compared the Affordable Care Act rollout to being hugged by someone who immediately spills coffee on you, then asked for a tip. She mocked his red line in Syria as disappearing ink, a warning so empty that it made America look negotiable on the world stage. Kelly's commentary didn't just challenge his record, it poked holes in the myth. She positioned Obama less as a transformative leader and more as a masterclass in branding, a case study in how charisma can keep you floating above the storm, while the ground beneath you quietly erodes. And every time she pulled back another layer, it became harder to ignore the gap between the Obama people thought they were voting for and the one who actually ran the country.
They stopped the presses. Obama interfered and said, hold on. And there was a memo saying, per the president's directive, and they're going in a new direction. Lo and behold, what happened next was, we're going to do a new assessment and we're going to see what Russian interference was. Immediately, the media started reporting, it was huge. They interfered in everything. They tried to help Trump. So the answer to the homework was delivered to the media before the homework had been done. And then when the homework was officially delivered in January of 17 to Obama, shock of all shocks, it said what Obama wanted it to say, which was Russia, Russia, Russia. They wanted to help Trump. And off we were on the collusion allegations that would dominate the Trump first term.
From the very beginning, Barack Obama wasn't just a politician. He was a brand. The sharp suits, the calm voice, the perfectly timed pauses that made even the simplest sentence sound profound. The media didn't just cover him, they curated him. Photos weren't just pictures, they were portraits. Speeches weren't just political addresses, they were events. To many Americans, he wasn't simply running for president, he was promising a cultural shift, a generational reset. Hope and change weren't just campaign slogans, they were emotional triggers. For a country tired of political bickering and economic uncertainty, Obama felt like the clean slate everyone was waiting for. But branding is a tricky thing. It's built to highlight strengths while burying flaws. And as his presidency unfolded, that carefully constructed image began to show cracks. The charm and charisma didn't disappear, they only grew stronger. But behind the flawless delivery were decisions, compromises, and contradictions that didn't match the pristine, poster boy version of the story. The man who promised a revolution in politics became the master of political optics. Heavy on presentation, light on transformation. And while millions saw the polished highlight reel, the reality behind the scenes looked far different. Because for all the hope he inspired, much of Obama's presidency wasn't the superhero origin story it was sold as, it was a lesson in how image can outshine reality. And nothing revealed that more than the way he handled the rest of the world.
Speaking of Barack Obama, he decided to drop a post on X today, and I thought, okay, maybe in the wake of the Pete Hegseth presser, he's going to say something like, no matter how you feel about the Iranian strike, hats off to our, boys in blue, our guys in the bombers. He went a different way. This is what it was.
I'm curious how you're thinking about this eulogy specifically in the moment and all the tensions that you just brought out.
I didn't even want to talk. I was so mad. Part of the reason I think I ended up having anything to say at that moment was when I heard some of the victims' families forgive the shooter. And I thought, all right, let's see if maybe this is a way America can hear me at this moment. Go back to that day 10 years ago. What I think binds it together, all these different strands, case upholding healthcare, a case declaring same-sex marriage part of our constitutional protections, of mourning. I think what pulls it all together is that no one person did any of that.
So he's sitting around on a June Thursday thinking about himself and his glory days. And to your point, Smug, I'm starting to warm up to Michelle Obama's POV. I mean, what is he doing?
At home, the biggest test of Obama's hope and change promise came with the Affordable Care Act, his signature achievement, the one meant to define his presidency. On paper, it sounded like the political equivalent of a warm embrace. Affordable health coverage for everyone, fairness in the system, and an end to the nightmare of medical bankruptcies. But the rollout? It was a disaster. Healthcare.gov crashed more often than it worked, leaving millions stuck in an endless loop of error messages and phone calls. People expecting relief were met with rising premiums, confusing rules, and penalties for not playing along. The dream of affordable coverage was there, but it came wrapped in red tape and glitches. And while the economy did climb out of the 2008 crash, the recovery wasn't the economic miracle it was sold as. Wages for working-class Americans barely moved. The national debt soared, and the Federal Reserve kept printing money like it was playing a never-ending game of Monopoly, a move that critics warned could backfire in the long run. Then there was the promise of unity. Obama came into office as the great bridge builder, the man who could bring both sides together. Instead, the country left his presidency more politically divided than it had been in decades. The tone of politics didn't soften, it hardened, and those deepening divisions didn't vanish after he left office. They became the foundation for the political chaos that came next.
So here is Trump just now. He was just caught on camera saying, well, we'll play both of them in succession. Let her rip.
Witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold, Tulsi Gabbard. What they did to this country in 2016, starting in 2016, but going up to 2020 in the election. They tried to rig the election, and they got caught. And there should be very severe consequences for that. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, That's the one they, look, he's guilty. It's not a question, I like to say, let's give it time. It's there, he's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries. You've seen some pretty rough countries. This man has seen some pretty rough countries, but you've never seen anything like that. And we have all of the documents. And from what Tulsi told me, she's got thousands of additional documents coming.
I mean, there he is on camera saying he thinks Barack Obama is guilty of treason. And that is a word Tulsi used too. It may be too dramatic, but I don't know. I mean, it certainly is a threat.
It was becoming clear that the gap between the Obama brand and the Obama record wasn't just a small crack, it was a widening fault line. And nothing would expose that fault line more than the controversies that followed. For someone who campaigned on transparency and accountability, Obama's presidency was stacked with controversies, many of which the public either never heard about or quickly forgot. And it wasn't because they weren't serious, it was because his charisma acted like political Teflon. Nothing seemed to stick. Take the surveillance state. You'd think a constitutional lawyer would be cautious about expanding government spying powers. Instead, under Obama, the NSA's reach grew at record speed. Then came Edward Snowden's leaks, pulling back the curtain on just how much data was being scooped up on American citizens. It was the kind of revelation that should have sparked national outrage, and it did briefly. But the administration brushed it off as a necessary evil for security. Then there was his aggressive stance toward whistleblowers. The man who spoke about protecting truth-tellers ended up prosecuting them at a rate unmatched by any modern president. Journalists and leakers didn't find a champion in Obama. They found an adversary. The scandals didn't stop there. The IRS targeting controversy, where certain political groups claimed they were unfairly audited. The VA hospital debacle, where veterans waited months, sometimes years, for medical care. And of course Benghazi, where the deaths of 4 Americans sparked outrage and years of congressional hearings. Any one of these could have sunk another president's approval ratings. But with Obama, they passed like bad headlines. Here today, gone tomorrow. Part of that resilience came from his uncanny ability to own the spotlight. When things got tense, he could pivot to charm, humor, or empathy so quickly that the controversy seemed to fade in the background. And the media, often enamored with the image he projected, gave him breathing room that most leaders could only dream of. But while he was busy managing domestic perception, a storm was brewing in the final months of his presidency, one that would dominate headlines for years and cast a long shadow over the White House that came after him.
There are a lot of people in the country who are drawn to Trump right now, notwithstanding some of Trump's problematic character traits, because they think their lives will improve under him. They think the economy will be better under him, and they have 4 years of experiencing it to inform that opinion. And I do wonder how they're going to react to being called sexists by Barack Obama, who he rightly points out, how many times have we seen him on the yachts of his billionaire Hollywood friends and on his estate in Martha's Vineyard, trying to tisk them into voting for the woman, despite his perception that they're a bunch of misogynists.
If politics is theater, Barack Obama was a headlining act. He understood the power of a camera lens better than almost any president before him. Late-night talk shows, viral YouTube moments, March Madness brackets. He didn't just participate, he owned them. The White House Correspondents' Dinner wasn't a political event for him. It was a stand-up special where he roasted opponents with the timing of a seasoned comedian. This wasn't accidental. Obama knew that in the age of 24, 7 media personality could shield you from policy failures. A sharp one-liner could get more coverage than a policy critique. A well-placed pop culture reference could dominate headlines, burying a tough question about foreign policy or the economy. The media played, right along. They treated him like a political unicorn, a rare figure above the usual mudslinging, someone whose flaws didn't fit the narrative they wanted to tell. While other presidents found themselves boxed in by scandal after scandal, Obama's charisma let him slip through unscathed. Even when mistakes were glaring, the coverage often felt like it was grading him on a curve. And that public trust, carefully cultivated over 8 years, gave him room to maneuver, especially in the chaotic final stretch of his presidency. Because as the cameras kept rolling, a political storyline was quietly being rewritten, one that would dominate the headlines well into the Trump era. Barack Obama's legacy is a paradox. He was the man who inspired millions to believe in sweeping change, yet much of what he delivered came in careful, calculated steps. He promised unity but left the nation more divided. He campaigned against endless war, yet presided over one of the most active military playbooks in modern history. To his supporters, he'll always be the symbol of hope, a historic figure who represented possibility. To his critics, he was a master marketer, someone who perfected the art of appearing above the political fray while making the same compromises and playing the same games as those before him. In the end, Obama's greatest achievement may not have been a piece of legislation or a foreign policy deal. It was the brand he built, a brand so powerful that it could survive controversy, sidestep scandal, and turn flaws into footnotes. And that's why his story isn't just about politics. It's about the power of image in shaping history. Because once the cameras stop rolling and the applause fades, what's left isn't the speeches or the magazine covers. It's the record. And that record tells a story far more complicated than the one we were sold. If you guys liked today's video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.